Hey everybody, it's the Trout. It's been said that creative people dance to a different drum. Well, I have to admit that's true because I is one. But it doesn't matter if you're a musician, producer, an engineer, a dancer, a painter, an architect. Creative people seem to be just a little different than the rest of the world. Not that we're not normal, but just a little different. And sometimes we need help just like everybody else does. Well, that's where my next guest comes into play. Nadine Page, who is the developer and director of this great organization called the Creative Well. Nadine talks about the mental health of creative people and how her organization can help them. She's not just located in the UK, she's got offices all over the world and continues to grow this great organization. So if you want to know more about how the Creative Well is helping musicians and creative people, no matter what kind they are, across the world, stay tuned because that's next on KT and the Trout.
The Creative Well, we're an international organisation, so we kind of, yeah, we have like a global presence. So a lot of our clients are over in the States, in the different states within the States, and New Zealand, Australia, and we have a lot of people that we look after here as well. We've got clients in Japan and in France, so we're kind of we have a global presence. And when I
Mhm.
set Creative Well up, we it was very much we had a presence in the Hollywood Hills and in the Surrey Hills where I live
Mhm.
here.
Okay.
And the reason I kind of like gravitated towards the Hollywood Hills was my daughter was working there. So basically, the Creative Well, we're an international organisation. We support the mental health and the well-being of musicians, but also all the other allied industry professionals as well. So
Okay.
it could be a sound production, it could be a label, it could be a vendor even at a festival. So it doesn't have to be, the artists themselves or even the
Mhm.
session musicians, but it literally looks after, professionals working across the industry. And we also look after students striving towards a career in the industry, and again, in all the different sectors of that industry. And we uniquely kind of support the mental health and the well-being, of people who create the music, but also execute the tours as well. And I kind of, when I had this vision, I wanted to inspire creativity and
Mhm.
joy and resilience. So, kind of, when we're looking after someone's mental health, wanted to be able to restore that joy that maybe they had lost along the way. Um, and
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of how the Creative Well started, and still is to this day. It's all
Now, how
about,
long and how long you guys have been around? How long you been
yeah.
in
So
business?
2 years.
Oh, not
So
very long then.
not very long, no. So what happened was, at the very beginning of the pandemic. So I think it was November 19. I think what happened, I mean, I started this, it kind of was born out of my love of music. So I am a
Okay.
real lover of music, and what I particularly love is live music as well. So I would be at lots of live shows, I would be talking to different artists and, getting to know them. I've got some friends who are musicians on tour a lot of the time, so I'd get to go to their tours with them, and I would get to kind of understand how they ticked really, and that actually,
We're all crazy.
yeah, in a world, yeah, in a nutshell.
My
And
wife, my wife was our manager for a band back a long time ago, and she says, "I can't deal with you people. You're all insane."
you're a very, very special breed, but I
That's,
really was fascinated by that,
yeah.
and because I've worked in mental health, well, for more than 25 years, going on
Right.
30 years now.
So
Um,
are you? Let me digress a little bit. Are you a counselor yourself? Do you do that yourself? Do you help people?
yeah, I do
And I
help
mean, did
people.
you start out doing that in your business career?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So what happened? I started my career off as a mental health nurse, and I specialised in substance misuse right from qualifying, and worked in substance misuse for 12 years. Managed the local drug and alcohol services across southwest Surrey, where we live here.
Okay.
I then, after 12 years, decided that I was going to go full time to the university locally in Surrey. So, the University of Surrey as a drug and alcohol expert. And I became a lecturer in mental health there. And I taught mental health across the programs,
Mhm.
and talked about emotional resilience, etc., etc. But all the whilst I was doing that, I was, in my hobby, if you like, is going to concerts and going to different gigs. And like I was saying, I was talking to people, and because I was talking not just to my friends, because they were taking me along with them, backstage I'd get to talk to other musicians, I'd get to talk to some of the roadies or some of the security guards.
Right.
And
Right.
you know I what I learned was that I couldn't do the same things that I was doing with Joe Public, if you like,
No,
because
yeah, I can
actually,
understand that. Yeah.
yeah. And so I started to develop a real appreciation that this was a very niche group of people who don't go to sleep when everyone else goes to sleep. They don't work the same hours that, we all work. And it actually needed a lot of it needed a different way of thinking and a different way of supporting, because I couldn't say to them, talk to them about sleep hygiene, for example, when actually they're waking up when everyone else is going to sleep. And
Right.
so I'd need a different tactic, I'd need a different approach. And
Yeah.
I think that's what they were finding was missing, that when they may have sought a counsellor out before, or somebody, an addiction specialist, it may have been that they didn't understand their lifestyle, and so they didn't feel understood. So I then, with one of my musician friends, I started to talk to him about that, and he knew that I'd said to him that if I had my time again, I would absolutely want to work in the music industry. But I think, what would I do? And he just kind of said, well, why don't you do what you do? And that kind of like then sowed the seed, really. So the
Hmm.
Creative Flower was born out of my love of music, but also my love of helping people. And because music gives me so much, whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad, there's music for every emotion. But
Yep.
actually, who looks after the people that actually create that music? Because that music has also come from a place of hurt a lot of the time. And
Yes.
who's looking after them? So I had this real kind of need, I guess, to want to give back to the people that helped help me and help so many others, and help us to feel alive, help us to feel happy, and comfort us when we're not happy. So um, very, very quickly, my thinking then started. And so after having been at the university then for another, I think, must have been another 9 years full
Oh,
time,
wow.
because
Yeah.
I'd been there working there alongside like a lecturer practitioner, so kind of like going in, doing my lecturing, and then still working in the drug and alcohol field as a clinician. But um, I had also, at that point, like I said, after 12 years of doing that, just wanted to go to the university full time. And I did that for 9 years, and then just decided one day I was going to stop that and do this. And the Creative Well was born. Yeah. So I'm not just a mental health nurse either. So over the years, I trained in different areas as well, because when I was working with people, I found that all I necessarily had to offer them in drugs and alcohol was, substitute medication. It wasn't really helping them to
Hmm.
make, changes a lot of the time. So I actually thought there's got to be more to this, and there's got to be more that I can do. So I just, kept adding to my qualifications, and I became a naturopath and a nutritional therapist as well. So it's kind of, I got my feet in the medical field, but also the natural world, and I kind of bring the two together. And it's been amazing, particularly working in this industry as well, to be able to offer people different therapies. And it is like, yourself, it's not one size fits all, is it?
Tell me about what your typical client is, or who they are, or how do you find them? Tell me a little bit about that.
So I don't think we have a typical client, actually. I think our clients are so different, very, very different, and come from different walks of life. And you hit the nail on the head there. What you were saying before about the pressure to perform, the pressure to create, and that can go right across the board. From, we're seeing that anxiety already manifesting in, some of the students that haven't hit the big time, or they feel like they want, that's their expectation, but actually it's about managing that expectation along the way. Because, like you said, they could be working and working at this, and they're never going to hit the big time, but they have amazing skills that could be channeled into music and funneled through music if that's what they love, but they're never going to necessarily be Adele, Michael Jackson, Prince. They're
Whatever.
never
Yeah, yeah,
they're never naturally going to be that. But so a lot of our work is, like you've just said, like managing that expectation and that disappointment along the way, the performance anxiety. We've seen a lot more of this year. And I think that's because we had that COVID break
yeah,
as well. So,
yeah.
kind of like I was saying to you, I left the university in November 19, and I started this in um, officially on the 1st of January 2020.
Hmm.
And that very first month, I was over in Los Angeles and, starting to network there, kind of came back to the UK for a few weeks, then went out to Minneapolis. I guess connecting with people
Right.
when I was in both those places, it was interesting. So those first couple of months, what we saw coming through the door during that time was very different to what happened post March
Hmm.
2020.
Hmm.
And then what we saw post March 2020 was a group of people who literally, the live industry collapsed overnight.
Right.
People weren't able to tour, and people before that have had a love hate relationship with touring. Everybody's different. So some people struggled with going on tour and being away from home for such a long time, and then other people were struggling coming home and then kind of adapting back to like home
Yeah.
life after 8 months on the road of
Hey,
continual.
Mom, who's that guy that keeps coming in our room?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was
That's
there
your
was
dad. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So a lot of relationship issues we kind of have to deal with as well. But what we did see an increase of is people using stimulants on their own. So, what we were seeing pre-March 2020 would have been people using stimulants, but in a more fun way, in a more recreational way, after gigs, and to help them come down from the high they were
Hmm.
feeling, or maintaining that high, taking more stimulants after they came. It was more, I think before the pandemic, it was more of a recreational drug use problem that we saw, but they were using with other people. And what we saw after March, particularly after October 2020, when we went into a second lockdown here in the UK, was people using cocaine on their own just to get the high. And they'd never used cocaine before. This was the interesting thing. To get the high that they would have got from
I'm
performing
playing out loud.
thing at home. And that was more in the younger
Yeah.
people that we were seeing, that had, they were just, on the cusp of going out, either, um, on their first big tours and stuff like that. And I think because it went on so long, they were looking to replace that high. So our clients are very different. So we do have, you know, people who have the, creative anxiety, which, you were just talking about.
Hmm.
We have people who have, drug and alcohol problems, that, that you would find that, that go hand in hand with touring, the culture that is kind of almost accepted, but it's, it can be a problem. We have people who have genuine mental health disorders as well, prescribed disorders that we look after. And we get a lot of students kind of starting out, and what seems to be a lot of what they're telling us is that the emotional well-being isn't necessarily supported. It's not even necessarily even spoken about, say, on their university program. And not everybody goes to university to bring music to the world, but we have a lot of different students around the world who say that they would like emotional well-being kind of embedded in their curriculum, throughout all the modules on their
Hmm.
curriculum, throughout all the years of their
Yep.
degree courses, because actually it is about managing that expectation of where they're going and what they can do, but also it's that, what they expect of themselves, and it's also how they manage that. So, for example, they could start to self-medicate by using drugs and alcohol. And we have a few students have had to drop out of university. They've been welcomed back, but had to take a break because that got so bad that they
Yeah.
could function at university. And then we, like I was saying, we do have people who have um, mental health disorders. And one of the very common things that got picked up, over the last 2 years during that lockdown was the ADHD that actually hadn't been actually diagnosed formally a lot of the time, that kind of came to the forefront during this pandemic, and particularly in women. And it's very difficult to diagnose ADHD in women because that we don't.
Yeah, it's usually a young, yeah, guy's thing. Yeah.
And these are grown women who have used, have got like strategies in place, um, and that they've been able to manage. But I think what lockdown did, it stopped them from going out doing things, and actually they were sat with themselves. So the symptoms of ADHD kind of came to the forefront. So we did actually, part which isn't on my website actually. So I do have a psychiatrist that works with me. It's a psychiatrist that I've worked with for over 20 years in my clinical practice here in the
Hmm.
UK.
Hmm.
And she's come on board, and she, if I flag somebody up, she can do the formal diagnosing as well. And what I've done also is, establish links with different psychiatrists. So I've got a psychiatrist that I use in LA, one in New York. So we don't actually have to, Dr. Braithwaite here, who works with me, will assess all my American clients, but then she will actually then hand over to an American psychiatrist to do the prescribing if needed and to do that monitoring. So we're all kind of like working together. Um, we also have pregnant women as well. So pregnant musicians, or people who are pregnant who are work on the as part of these large tours as well. So we've got people that we're helping to manage their pregnancy, maybe pregnancy and mental health as well. So my PhD that I studied was about around perinatal mental health and nutrition. So a lot of the work that I do with my pregnant women is like focusing on nutrition, but also helping them to manage day to day. Because, as you know yourself, working in the industry is really demanding when you're not pregnant. So when you become pregnant, it becomes quite a scary
I
place.
can't imagine. Yeah.
But I think what happened during the lockdown was that a lot of people lost confidence. And the more that it went on, the more confidence they lost. And then they started to use substances again, to try and get their confidence back. And I think when they hadn't toured for so long, a lot of people that came through our door as they were just about to start going back out there again, was the performance anxiety that they'd never experienced before in their lives. They were
I
suddenly
can
thinking,
understand that.
gosh, I've got to go
Yeah.
back out there and do my things. I can't even remember my songs that they've been singing for 40 years. So
Yep.
these are established artists that, yes, you get a certain amount of anxiety, and that's not a bad thing. That's what kind of motivates you and
Hmm.
makes you the greats that you are. But
Right.
it's out of control, and they were having to manage it by other means. So we saw a lot of that, and that seems to have subsided a bit now. We're not getting so many referrals for the we get performance anxiety referrals, but not so directly linked to the COVID lockdowns that we had. And I found that a really interesting time, actually, because some people were really motivated during that time to create new music and
Hmm.
new work, whereas other people just actually
Couldn't
shut
do
down.
it.
And
Yeah.
it was really interesting to watch. And so, like I was saying, started this at the beginning of 2020, thinking, oh gosh, it's just that, we're going into a lockdown, and my plan, working my business model, or the way that I would naturally work, because I love people and I love being in front of people, was to come and go between, like I was saying, the Hollywood Hills and the Surrey Hills. But Zoom has been amazing, and it's kind of bridged that gap that we wouldn't have had.
Oh, you couldn't.
You
We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for Zoom.
Yeah, I know. And as much as, there's this love-hate relationship with social
Yes.
media,
Yep.
you know, actually it still kept us very much together. And actually what I have found during this period has been that, I've met people that I probably wouldn't necessarily have had the time to meet, or they wouldn't have had the time to give me, because they're so busy. And actually what it's allowed is, for us to connect without leaving our homes, and, you know, really kind of develop our ideas, and stop and really think about what is needed to support people, and link with really key people within the business who can kind of guide me and the team in, and show us what we need to be focusing on. And I think people had time to stop and think about themselves as well. So actually it came at the right time, rather than a wrong time, if you like. And like I was saying, people lost their livelihoods overnight,
Sure they
and
did.
very stressful time for people. And a lot of people who I know that are touring with very successful bands had to take local jobs, walking streets, delivering things.
Yeah.
And
And menial jobs that they didn't want to take. That you're
yeah,
going from. Yeah. Hey, we just played Wembley, and now can I paint your house?
yeah, absolutely. And also, what the other things that we have seen as well, people not going back to music, and actually
That's
not wanting,
sad.
and that's been really sad. Yeah.
There's three things that I wanted to kind of mention. I watch a series out of different thing out of UK, and there's a lot of talk about confidence.
Mm.
People will say, "I lost my confidence." What does
Mm.
that really mean when people say that? I always want to try and equate it to how we refer to it in America, but what does that mean when they say that I lost my confidence? What does that kind of mean?
And that's what I always ask them, actually, because it does mean different things to different people. And I think during COVID, when people were getting COVID as well, right at the beginning, I think they couldn't remember. It was almost like they had like this brain fog, and their confidence was they couldn't remember anything. They couldn't remember, and I think it was almost like an exhaustion. So when you kind of break it down, of course they're not feeling confident, because actually they're physically not okay.
Hmm.
And physically, and yourself, to be a musician, to especially to be a touring musician, you need to be an athlete. you know
Yes, you
you
do.
you physically need to be well, you need to be
Yep.
looking after yourself. And you know yourself that you've been in this industry for a long time, that people abuse that sometimes. And our bodies can only take so much. And I
Right.
think getting COVID on top of all the excess that they may have been doing, their bodies completely shut down. So when I always ask the question, when people say they feel something, and I'll say, well, what does that actually mean to you? And I think that's a really good question that you're asking. And what does that actually feel like for you? And people would answer that in very different ways. But one of the common themes during that time was that they it's almost like the self-doubt this started to creep in. So that, probably behind that, they always had that, but it just seemed to be bigger. It had grown enormous because with the long COVID, they weren't necessarily remembering a lot of the stuff, a lot of the words. They were just thinking, "Oh, I've got dementia." Of course, they didn't have dementia. They had they were recovering from something
Yeah.
that looks very different today because we've got vaccines and stuff, and people getting it now and not necessarily having the same reaction that they were having right at the beginning. But I think it was that fear around everything else that was going on as well, that they didn't feel confident, and there was this fear of contagion, if you like, fear of catching COVID if they hadn't caught COVID. Oh,
Oh,
actually, now
wow. I
I'm
never
going to
thought
go.
about that.
Yeah, I'm going to go back out there and I'm going to catch this and I'm going to die.
Yep.
Don't say people don't feel like that now, but right at the beginning when we came out that first lockdown, and
Paranoia.
they were, there were a few gigs that started. It was kind of that paranoia because actually they're artists and they're being thrown into a big arena with lots of people. And up until that point, we're socially distancing at home. And I think also it really depended on where people lived. So if people lived quite rurally, which a lot of, a lot of our clients do, like our high
Mhm.
profile clients do, they're kind of like hidden behind a wall.
Yeah, because they don't want to be people seeing them all the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they haven't been mingling like they would. So I think they
No.
became quite agoraphobic. So that confidence was very much about not being with people, not seeing people. But
Hmm.
um, and I just think also, you know, just trying to think about my clients. Obviously, I've got a team of people that work here and they might say
Sure.
something different. But just thinking about my clients, a lot of them are aging musicians, and I say that with a lot of love because
I
it just seems
I
that's
understand.
yeah, a lot of them come my way that have been in the industry a long time.
Right, right.
They understand the industry, and so to for them, it was completely alien for them to feel that way because they had actually been performing all their lives. They've been very successful, and obviously there was that fear of kind of going back out there again, but also that they had lost their relevance during that time.
You
And
know what's interesting though, when you think about it, is they become like the rest of us. And that's
mm,
really what really kind of differentiates them. Because when you're making ungodly sums of money, you don't play the same games that the average person does.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, you just like everybody else. Now, a lot of famous people had a lot of money that they could stay home and sit and do Zoom meetings and do TV and all that good stuff. But I'm sure a lot of people didn't have the capability. So let's
mm,
say a famous A-lister comes in and calls you. You have it's and I can equate this to music a little bit. You have to differentiate yourself immediately. You're standing. Let's say it's um, the lead singer for Duran Duran. I can see him. I can't remember his name right now.
Simon
Or
Bond.
thank, thinking it's "Ordinary World's" my favorite song they ever did. Never a great
Amazing.
fan, but I love that song. I love that song.
Beautiful.
He walks into your office one day. Hello, I'm here for your help, and you're like, wait a minute. I'm the professional here. I've got to go past that and realize this is a guy coming to me. That's
Mm,
got to be hard too. I would think that's got to be a difficult position to be in because
mm,
then they can also pull the "oh, I am who I am" thing.
mm,
And who are you to tell me? But
mm.
that's the other part of it. I can see all that kind of running around and going in the business that you're in.
Yeah.
And that's intriguing to me because you're dealing with a lot
Egos.
of egos, and
Mm,
some of them are giant,
mm,
and you got to bring them down to, dude, you put your pants on one leg at a time, just like the
mm,
rest of us. So bring it the business that you're in. I think that's very intriguing to me because I look back on the COVID, and I have a friend of mine's a fairly well-known comic here in Dallas, and I remember calling her maybe in April of 2020.
mm,
And I said to her, I said, man, I'd be glad. We'd been under lockdown here for a month, but started doing. I'll be glad I'm 6 months from now we'll be over this so we can move on. And she goes, it'll be a year. And here we are 2 years later. And I'm going, she
yeah.
wasn't off by far. In fact, her gigs just started, because when you're doing comedy, you're in a very small atmosphere.
Yeah.
So she kind of related stuff to that same situation
Mm,
because they were afraid to go out.
mm.
They're
Absolutely.
afraid, and I'm thinking there's a lot of people like in that business that and they're 10 feet from the audience. So
Yeah.
it's not like when you're in a crowd and they're 100 feet away, the chances of you getting anything are, slim.
Yeah.
So I
And
think it's really cool what you're doing.
thank you. And I think what you were saying a moment ago as well, because we are an international company and an international organization, global, it's kind of, you do have to manage. COVID's been so different in all of these places, all of them. And, I was in Dallas 4 weeks ago when you had Storm Landon, which is, I think, what you were probably alluding to,
Yeah.
earlier on when we were talking. And so I was there 4 weeks ago, probably now. And
How long were you here?
I was doing a stopover actually,
Uh,
and that's a couple of days, and then I was going on to see my daughter who's now in Mexico and not in LA anymore. But we flew in on that day when the storm hit, and yes, it was. It's not what I imagined at all. But we came from a place where we were all masked and we were still kind of socially distancing as well.
good.
We arrive and there's nobody masked in Dallas.
No.
And it's like it doesn't even exist. I kind of like think, I was going to kind of like rewinding a little bit, we think about physical health and we are always driving, you can't have, you can't not think about mental health, but I think you can't just have mental health and not think about physical health, particularly in this industry, because actually it takes up so much of your energy and you do need to be an athlete as well. So it's about looking after your physical health as well as your mental health. And I don't think you can have mental health if your physical health isn't good. If you hurt yourself, you have an injury, or
Hmm.
you're not eating properly, it has an impact on how you are able to function and you're not functioning optimally. So I think that's one thing I would like to drive home is that it's about holistic health. It's, yes, we specialize in mental health. Yes, we specialize in addiction, drugs, alcohol, gambling, sexual addiction. It's not just drugs and alcohol, it can be,
Hmm.
lots of other different things. And so I I think you can't kind of, isolate anything. So I think it's about looking at people holistically, understanding them, understanding the culture that they choose to work in and choose to thrive in. And I think you said something really important a little while ago about the joy. And, my whole thing is about helping people to restore that joy, that love of what they do.
I
I want them
understand.
to get out of bed and really, love that. And, one thing that I've got from you tonight is that you vibe very much the same as me. And I think like attracts like. And, you're very much about, you were saying about networking. And I honestly think that's one of the most important things in this business. And I think people need people. And like you, I'm always thinking of who I can connect people to as well. And again, for no good reason other than I get a lot of joy from
Yeah.
actually seeing people thrive. So it's not about, me wanting to just help. I get a lot from that. And, I thrive and it makes me, feel joyous when I can see people achieving what they want to achieve. And, it's just this whole thing was about me saying thank you. My experience of like people coming in and to the sessions here is that that's one of the big things. Who can they trust? They don't know, because they don't know whether people, are true friends or whether people
Yeah.
just hang on because they're famous or they do what they do and they can get something out of it. And I think that must be quite soul destroying, really, not knowing that if somebody's true to you or not. Because I think we all need those true people in our lives, and that is actually one of the biggest issues that kind of unfolds, during the sessions is who can they trust?
Well,
Um,
and that's something earned. That is something earned. And I think that there are people, I always thought about the President of the United States.
mm,
And once they leave, they're still the President of the United States.
mm,
And most of the time when you meet them, and I've never had the privilege of meeting any of them, but I've known people who've known some of them. They're all still very cautious of what they do because they can never let their guard down
no,
because they were the president of the United States. And
yeah,
that's sad. I
yeah,
mean, it's sad to me because they can never really, they're only around probably a handful of people that can be who they really are.
mm,
And so when Simon LeBon comes in and sees you, you got to go, dude, just come on in. I'm just like
Yeah.
you.
Exactly. And we've got the lovely Anna that works with us now. So Anna's been their backing singer for years and years, and she's still touring with them. And I'd asked Anna if she would actually like to be one of the ambassadors for the Creative Well.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
because we had a lot of male ambassadors, but we didn't have a lot of female ambassadors. And she said, yeah, sure. And then, we kind of talked some more. And her background, she has a master's in psychology.
See, who would have known? I mean, think about that. Yeah.
And then she also then does a lot of voluntary work, talking to people, counselling, mentoring, coaching people. And so she's come to work at the Creative Well with us. And, we're very lucky to have her because she's got that industry knowledge, that insider knowledge,
Right.
but also, she's very passionate about, supporting people and helping people. And to this point, she's been doing that voluntarily. And so, this kind of makes sense for her. So yeah, we've got the lovely Anna. When you're talking about networking, obviously there's all the other socials, but I think the key thing has been LinkedIn. Obviously, we've met through LinkedIn.
Correct.
Um, if you look at my LinkedIn, I think, I've got lots of connections there, but lots of, um, I think there's over 800 on there, but most of those people are from the music industry or from academia. So they are, you know, there's a whole network there that
Right.
people can draw, that other people in the industry can draw from. So definitely LinkedIn, I think, would be a
Okay.
good, because actually, we might not be the right person for that person, but they may be looking for somebody else. And on that LinkedIn, there's a whole network of amazing people that we found each other. And but they're not all the same, they're all very different, and they're all like I say, from different parts of music, maybe musical theatre, TV composers,
Hmm.
right across the board. So I think definitely share the LinkedIn page. I think
Okay.
that would be a good thing, because I think that will help everybody.
Last thing I want to ask you this is, so if they call you, is there, and I know I'm going to get down to the nitty-gritty here, but is there a charge? Do you give them free advice at the beginning, or how does all that work? I call you up and I go, I'm not doing well. I want to help me out. So tell me what's the logistics there?
The first thing would be a 15-minute free consultation.
Okay.
So that would be with myself, and then I would gauge what that person needed. And so I would, kind of talk through what they think they need, and then what we could offer. And we can't, if there's nobody within this team that could offer them what I think they need that would support them best,
Right.
I will make sure that I find somebody to support them. There's no charge for that. And yes, there's a charge for assessing, and there's a charge
Sure.
for ongoing, therapy sessions or nutritional sessions,
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
or yoga or whatever. However, if people can't afford, we don't kind of push people away. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm working with somebody who is helping me to set up a charity alongside the business. So it's called the Creative Well charity.
Okay.
And then, the same principles apply, the same mission, the same vision. But I have a real problem of, if people are in need, I don't want them leaving without help just
Right.
because they haven't got the money to pay me. I'm not about that. I'm about people, and I'm about helping. And that's what motivates me to get out of bed in the morning. But yes, I do have to put food on my
Oh,
plate.
yeah,
And
you can't do it. I mean, you're paying for what you know. I understand
yeah,
that.
and if I could actually do it for free, I would absolutely do it for free. But I can't.
That's one thing. People would come to me and they go, "I'm going to start a nonprofit. People give you money." I go, "That's not the way it works." And I assume that you're under the same kind. I know in America you are obviously, but it's completely confidential. When they come to you, you are not allowed to provide any information to anybody else. Okay, I just want to make sure that I figured you were under the same guise that we were over in America. So
It's a completely safe space, and
okay,
when we start, I tell people that everything they say stays contained within, these four walls, and that I don't divulge any information to anybody. Everything stays completely anonymous. I explain how I store their notes, and
yep,
when I would destroy them in the future and how long I have to keep them for. But I always tell them, if you tell me that you're going to harm yourself or you're going to harm somebody
I
else,
have to tell people.
I can't, let you hurt yourself. So I'm gonna,
Mm,
break your confidence.
yeah,
But if I ever, and, it's very rarely that I have to break people's confidence. But when I do, I still like to tell them that I'm going to do that before I do that. So everything's up front. But however, there are some situations it's more dangerous to tell somebody, particularly if children are involved.
yes,
You have to be super, or if there's violence and some sort of abuse going on.
yep,
Sometimes to you can't always tell them because they might say, for example, run away with the children. But I very clear from the beginning, if you tell me you're going to harm somebody or if you're going to harm yourself, then I'm
yeah.
forced, you know to do that. I'm going to have to break your confidence. But apart from that, nobody, I mean, because of the nature of what I do, people always saying to me, oh, go on, tell me who you're working with, who you're working with. I
Can't tell them.
would never
Can't
do
tell
that.
them.
No,
And
because
I know. I just
mm,
know that it's got to be hard. I mean, it's got to be difficult when you see somebody that you go, "Oh my God, I can't." It's like you just can't. That's because,
yeah,
but that's okay because that's all right.
yeah. But you know what? Actually, it isn't that difficult for me.
No,
And
but
I
I mean,
think,
I understand, but you see, people don't understand that you're in the business to
yeah,
not telling anybody anything. And to me, you're in a business, so you've been in a business for a long time. So you're
mm,
used to it.
yeah,
People from the outside, if you start to, so who you been seeing?
mm,
Can't tell you. Is
no.
anybody big? I can't
And
tell you.
and it goes back to what you were saying. I get you working with Madonna all the time. It's like, I wouldn't say that, but like, the reason I say it's not difficult for me not to tell people, I actually find that surprisingly, considering I love music and I love artists and everything, it's surprisingly not difficult because I think that if it were me going to counselling, I need to know that that space is safe for me.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and I
Yeah.
think I just think of myself and I think,
Yeah.
no, I just couldn't because I would, if I, because doing this job, you have to have your own therapy as well. And, you can't, not have like clinical supervision. So I need to know that that space is safe for me and to kind of work through my things. And I don't want them then going out and telling everybody about
No.
me. So
No.
it's surprisingly actually very easy not to tell people because you would think, yeah, if you're working with an A-lister that everybody loves, like, oh yeah, I know them, I've done that with them, but I've never had that urge to
No.
do that, which is, I think, because I think about myself and what I need.
Well, it's like a
Um,
doctor. It's the same thing. I mean, you are a doctor, so it's the same thing. I mean, you can't. We have the HIPAA over here. You can't tell anybody about anything. It's the same way. And I know it sounds kind of funny, but when somebody gives me their phone number, I can't give it to anybody else. I just don't tell anybody I have it.
exactly.
And you just and jokingly, if something comes up and they go, "How do you know that person?" I know them, but I can't tell you anything about them. So, I mean, can you call them? Because that's one of the things I always tell people. Unless you can get them on the phone, you don't know them. So you say, get them on the phone. I just got to end it up. Thank you so much. It's been a real
Yeah,
pleasure talking to you.
real pleasure talking to you
Let's
as well.
let's hope that we continue to be friends, that we can
I
talk to
hope so.
each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thank you so much. I
I,
really
I
appreciate
I appreciate the kind words. And
it.
all I can say is have a good night,
And you too. Take care
and
and
I will stay in
sleep.
touch. All right.
Yeah, lovely. Take care. Thank you so much.